Prime Minister Mark Carney's decision to impose retaliatory tariffs on U.S.-made cars and trucks in response to President Trump's tariffs on Canadian vehicles is sending shockwaves through the global economy. The 25% tariff, announced on Thursday, could create a cascading effect, exacerbating an already tense trade relationship between the U.S. and Canada. While Carney framed these tariffs as a measure to protect Canadian interests, the reality is much more complicated and could lead to significant economic fallout, not only for the countries directly involved, but for global trade at large. The timing of this decision is particularly troubling. The immediate impact is already being felt in cities like Windsor, Ontario, where Stellantis, a key automaker, announced a 2-week closure of its factory. This shutdown will idle 3,600 workers and could set off a domino effect in the U.S. auto industry. Since Canadian auto factories supply a significant portion of parts to U.S. factories, the impact could lead to layoffs and slowdowns at U.S. factories as well. The interconnected nature of the auto industry means that the consequences of these tariffs will not be confined to one country. The ripple effects will stretch across borders, potentially leading to mass layoffs in both Canada and the U.S. Carney's assertion that these tariffs are aimed at maximizing economic pressure on the U.S. while minimizing damage to Canada's economy is highly optimistic. The auto sector in Canada is tightly integrated with the U.S. economy, with more than 90% of Canadian-made vehicles exported to the U.S. This deep integration means that the fallout from these tariffs will be felt not just in Canada, but also in the U.S. The trade balance between the two nations in the auto sector has historically been relatively stable, and these tariffs are likely to disrupt that balance in a way that could lead to higher costs for consumers on both sides of the border. For Canadian consumers, the increased cost of U.S.-made cars could lead to a rise in the price of vehicles across the board. Meanwhile, American consumers could face similar price hikes for Canadian vehicles, potentially exacerbating inflation. Furthermore, Carney's plan to create a coalition of like-minded countries to form a new trading order without the U.S. could prove to be a misguided and ultimately unfeasible approach. While many countries may share frustrations with the current U.S. administration's protectionist stance, assembling a cohesive bloc that can effectively replace the U.S. as a leader in global trade is a tall order. The U.S. has long been a dominant force in the global economy, and even without its leadership, the international trade system may struggle to function efficiently. Carney's vision of Canada stepping into this role may reflect a deep-seated desire to preserve the stability of the global economic system. But the reality is that the absence of U.S. leadership could lead to increased uncertainty, inefficiencies, and economic disarray. The broader implications of these tariffs are also worth considering. While they may offer short-term protection to Canadian industries, particularly the auto sector, they could set off a chain reaction of retaliatory tariffs and trade wars, further destabilizing the global economy. Countries around the world may feel compelled to retaliate against U.S. tariffs, leading to a global tightening of trade relations. This could result in reduced global growth, increased unemployment in key industries, and higher prices for consumers worldwide. Carney's criticism of Trump's tariff policies as ones that will rupture the global economy may not be far off the mark. These measures could trigger a prolonged period of economic uncertainty, with countries scrambling to protect their own interests at the expense of international cooperation. In conclusion, while Carney's actions are understandable as a response to the U.S. tariffs, they may end up doing more harm than good. The tariffs could create widespread disruption in both Canada and the U.S., with far-reaching consequences for industries and consumers alike. Moreover, Carney's attempts to forge a new trade order in the absence of the U.S. could lead to further instability as countries adjust to a less predictable global economic landscape. The situation is volatile, and the long-term effects of these tariffs are likely to be far more damaging than any immediate gains from protectionist policies.